May 22, 1992. Johnny Carson's last Tonight Show. The teleprompter said, "Stick to the script." But Johnny's dying mother had asked him for something else. What he did in those final 5 minutes made his director panic, his producers freeze, and 22 million Americans cry. It was 11:35 p.m. when Johnny Carson walked onto the Tonight Show stage for the 4,531st and final time. The studio audience at NBC's Burbank Studios gave him a standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. Johnny stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, smiling that famous smile, waving with that practiced ease that had made him America's favorite bedtime companion for 3 decades. But something was different tonight. Those who knew Johnny well, Ed McMahon, Doc Severinsen, the crew who'd worked with him for years, could see it in his eyes. There was a weight there, something beyond the nostalgia of a final show. Johnny Carson was carrying a secret, and in exactly 1 hour, he was going to share it with the world. The script for this final episode had been meticulously planned for months. Every joke was workshopped, every guest carefully chosen, every moment designed to celebrate Johnny's incredible career while keeping emotions at a comfortable distance. That's how Johnny wanted it. That's how Johnny always wanted it. Controlled, perfect, emotionally safe. What nobody knew was that 3 weeks earlier, Johnny had made a promise that would render that perfect script completely irrelevant. His mother, Ruth Carson, was dying. She was 87 years old and had been battling congestive heart failure in a hospital in Los Angeles. The doctor said she had maybe days, possibly a week or 2 if she was lucky. Ruth had always been a private woman, dignified and composed, much like her son. She'd watched every single one of Johnny's shows, sitting in her living room in Nebraska for decades, then later from her Los Angeles apartment when she moved to be closer to him. On May 1st, 1992, Johnny visited his mother in the hospital. She was weak, her breathing labored, but her mind was sharp. They talked about his childhood in Norfolk, Nebraska, about his early days in radio, about the long road that had led to The Tonight Show. They talked about his father, who had died years earlier. They talked about everything except the thing that was really happening, that this was probably goodbye. As Johnny prepared to leave, Ruth reached for his hand with surprising strength. "Johnny," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to do something for me on your last show." Johnny leaned in closer. "Anything, Mom? What is it?" "I need you to tell them the truth," Ruth said. "I need you to tell them about us, about who you really are. Not the Johnny Carson everyone thinks they know, the real one, the one I raised." Johnny felt his throat tighten. "Mom, I don't—" "Please," Ruth interrupted. "I've watched you hide behind that smile for 30 years. It worked. You were brilliant. But just once, before you leave that stage forever, let them see my son, the real one. That's all I'm asking. Promise me." Johnny Carson, who had spent his entire career maintaining perfect emotional distance, who had divorced 3 times rather than let anyone too close, who had built walls so high that even his closest friends couldn't scale them. That Johnny Carson looked at his dying mother and made a promise. "I promise, Mom, I'll do it." Ruth smiled and closed her eyes. "Good. Now go make your final show perfect, but save the last 5 minutes for me." Johnny left the hospital that day, knowing he'd just agreed to do the one thing he'd spent 30 years avoiding, being completely, vulnerably, terrifyingly honest on national television. The final show began exactly as planned. Johnny's opening monologue was sharp, funny, nostalgic, without being maudlin. He joked about his retirement, about golf, about finally having time to do all the things he'd been too busy to do. The audience loved it. America loved it. It was quintessential Johnny Carson, entertaining, engaging, and revealing absolutely nothing real. The guests came and went. Robin Williams did a characteristically manic set that had the audience in tears from laughter. Bette Midler sang "One for My Baby" and "One More for the Road." And "Here's That Rainy Day" with such emotional weight that even Johnny's mask cracked slightly. But he held it together. He was still following the script. The promise to his mother sat in his mind like a ticking clock. At 12:50 a.m., with 10 minutes left in the show, they went to the final commercial break. According to the script, Johnny would return, do a brief thank you to his crew and the audience, and then close with his signature golf swing and a simple thank you and good night. But when they came back from commercial at 12:55 a.m., Johnny didn't go to his mark. He didn't follow the teleprompter. Instead, he walked around his desk, sat on the edge of it, and just looked at the camera for a long, uncomfortable moment. The director in the booth tensed. This wasn't the plan. The producer's voice crackled through the headsets. "What's he doing? Is he okay?" Ed McMahon, standing off to the side, knew Johnny well enough to recognize that something significant was about to happen. He caught Johnny's eye, and Johnny gave him the slightest nod. It was time. "You know," Johnny began, his voice softer than usual, "we planned this whole night very carefully. Every joke, every moment, every goodbye. And it's been wonderful. But sitting here right now, I realize I'm about to walk away from this desk for the last time, and there's something I haven't said, something I need to say." The studio audience went completely silent. This wasn't the controlled, comfortable goodbye they'd been promised. This was something else entirely. 3 weeks ago, Johnny continued, and his voice cracked slightly on the words, "I visited my mother in the hospital. She's dying. She probably doesn't have much time left." You could hear people in the audience gasp. Johnny Carson never talked about his personal life. Never. And now, on his final show, he was telling 22 million people that his mother was dying. "She asked me to do something tonight," Johnny said. "She asked me to tell you the truth. Not the polished version, not the careful version, the real truth." In the director's booth, everyone was frozen. They could cut away, go to commercial, save Johnny from whatever vulnerability was about to spill out. But they didn't. Something about the moment felt sacred, untouchable. "I've spent 30 years sitting at this desk, talking to thousands of people, making millions of you laugh," Johnny said. "And in all that time, I've kept you at arm's length. I've been charming and funny and present, but I've never been real. Not completely. Because being real is terrifying." Johnny paused, visibly struggling with emotion. Ed McMahon, watching from the side, had tears streaming down his face. Doc Severinsen sat at his keyboard, frozen. "My mother raised me in Norfolk, Nebraska," Johnny continued. "My father was a hard man. Not cruel, just hard. He didn't know how to show affection. He didn't hug, didn't say, 'I love you,' didn't give compliments. And I became like him. I learned to keep everything locked up inside, to smile through anything, to never let anyone see what I was really feeling." The audience was completely still. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was confession. "When I started this show in 1962, I was so scared," Johnny said, and now the tears were visible in his eyes. "Scared I wasn't funny enough, wasn't good enough, would fail and embarrass myself. So I created this version of myself, confident Johnny, unflappable Johnny, Johnny who could handle anything with a smile and a joke. And it worked. You all loved that Johnny. Hell, I started to believe that Johnny was real." He wiped his eyes with his hand, not even trying to hide it anymore. "But my mother, Ruth, she knew better. She knew that the real me was still that scared kid from Nebraska who just wanted to make people laugh but didn't know how to let them love him back. She watched me go through 3 divorces because I couldn't let anyone close enough to really know me. She watched me keep my own children at a distance because I didn't know how to be vulnerable even with them. And it broke her heart." Johnny had to pause for several seconds to compose himself. The camera stayed on him. 22 million people were watching Johnny Carson cry openly for the first time in television history. "When she asked me to tell you the truth tonight, what she really meant was, 'Stop hiding, Johnny. Just for once, stop hiding,' he said. So here's the truth. I don't know if I've been a good father. I don't know if I've been a good friend. I've definitely not been a good husband, 3 times. I've been so focused on being Johnny Carson the performer that I forgot how to be John William Carson the person." He looked directly into the camera, and his next words came out barely above a whisper. "But I have been me with my mother. She's the only person who's ever seen all of me, the scared parts, the broken parts, the parts I kept hidden from everyone else. And she loved me anyway. Not because I was funny or famous or successful, just because I was her son." Johnny broke down completely then. His shoulders shook, and he covered his face with his hands. The audience didn't know what to do. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was Johnny Carson. He didn't break down. He didn't cry. He didn't expose his pain on national television. But he'd made a promise to his mother, and Johnny Carson always kept his promises. When he looked up again, his face was wet with tears, but there was something different in his expression. It was relief. It was freedom. It was the look of a man who'd finally put down a weight he'd been carrying for 30 years. "My mother is dying," Johnny said, "and the greatest gift she ever gave me was permission to be human in front of you. So thank you, Mom, for raising me, for believing in me, for loving me even when I couldn't love myself. And thank you for giving me this." He gestured to the studio, to the cameras, to everything. "Thank you for watching all these years," Johnny said to the camera, to America. "Thank you for letting me into your homes. Thank you for laughing with me even when I was too scared to laugh at myself. And thank you for this moment, for letting me finally be honest with you." The studio audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't the usual excited applause. It was the sound of people who'd just witnessed something profound, something that transcended entertainment. Many were crying, some were standing, all were clapping for the real Johnny Carson they'd finally been allowed to see. Johnny took a breath, wiped his face one more time and smiled. A different smile than the one he'd worn for 30 years. This one was real. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said, "and I've learned that sometimes the most important thing we can do is let people see us. Really see us. Not the performance, not the mask, just us, flawed and scared and trying our best." He paused one final time. "So thank you. From John William Carson, not from Johnny. Thank you for everything." He picked up his golf club, took his famous swing, and walked off the Tonight Show stage for the last time. The credits rolled, the show was over, and Johnny Carson, for the first time in his career, had let 22 million people see the man behind the smile. Ruth Carson died 6 days later on May 28, 1992. Johnny was with her. Her last words to him were, "You kept your promise. I'm so proud of you." At her funeral, Johnny gave a eulogy that was private, attended only by close family. But those who were there said it was the most honest thing he'd ever said. He talked about her strength, her wisdom, her unconditional love, and he talked about how she'd freed him, in those final 5 minutes of his show, to finally be himself. The final episode of The Tonight Show became the most watched late-night television broadcast in history. 55 million viewers ultimately tuned in across replays. But it wasn't the jokes or the guests that people remembered. It was those final 5 minutes when Johnny Carson stopped performing and started being real. Television critics called it the most powerful moment in late-night history. Fellow performers called it brave beyond words. But Johnny, in the few interviews he gave after retirement, simply called it what my mother needed me to do. Johnny Carson lived another 13 years after that final show, dying in 2005. In retirement, those who knew him said he was different, more open, more present, more willing to let people in. His son Chris later said, "It was like that final show broke something open in him. He was never the same after that, in a good way." The promise he made to his dying mother didn't just give Ruth Carson peace. It gave Johnny Carson permission to finally stop hiding, and it gave all of us, those 22 million watching that night and the millions more who've seen it since, permission to do the same. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let people see us. Not the perfect version, not the controlled version, just us, honest and vulnerable, and beautifully, terrifyingly human. If this story of a son's promise and the courage to be vulnerable moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs permission to stop hiding their true self. Have you ever made a promise that changed everything? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video for more untold stories about the real people behind entertainment's greatest legends.